It is a bonus edition of the On Fryer podcast coming to you on a day where the plot twist we were all sort of suspecting has come to fruition. It was obvious, Todd Sunday, once we got the news that the Padres had granted the Giants permission to speak with Bob Melvin. Seemed like just a matter of time. Even before that, maybe I was naive enough to think that Bob Melvin was actually coming back, and he was a man of his word when he spoke to Bernie Wilson, I believe Kevin Acee as well. But that is not the case, and he is moving on. The Padres are moving on. Everybody's probably happy as far as those two go. And so we discuss Todd Strain, Darnay Tripp. Maybe Derek Togerson will hop in at some point. This is his day off, but we gave him a heads up that we would be chatting. And so we'll see if Derek pops in at some point. And so, yes, what to make of this situation, what to make of what is next, how we got here, what this says about all parties involved. Lot to discuss, Todd Strain. First things first, the welcome music. All right, here we are, Todd Strain. What a mess this is. What a mess this continues to be. And just the organization continues to find itself in these positions, whether it is because of AJ Preller, whether it is because of Bob Melvin. I'm sure we'll discuss all of that. And I think if you've listened to us, you have an idea of kind of maybe some of our thoughts and feelings on the matter. And we want to hear from you as well. Get in on the chat. If you are watching us live on YouTube, certainly want to get your thoughts, your opinions, your questions. We'll get to all of them. So I appreciate you watching us there or watching us on NBC7.com, NBC San Diego Roku channel, or listening in your podcast app. Todd, your thoughts, your reaction. Again, I guess once Sunday rolled around, we knew this was a matter of time, but watching this all play out the last couple of days, what's been rattling around your head?
Well, today's official announcement of Melvin taking the Giants job is kind of confirmation of the dysfunctionality of the organization this season. There were multiple reports, lots of speculation about this dysfunctionality. It was downplayed by the organization. Today's development confirms everything and almost like confirms it tenfold. It just shows you how dysfunctional it was that on October 4th, AJ Preller was trying to convince us something different, convince us that he wanted Bob Melvin, convince us that Bob Melvin wanted to return, and convince everybody that Bob Melvin would be the manager moving forward, when I think all parties involved did not want that to happen. So this is really, in a roundabout way, the preferred outcome for both Melvin and what's left of the Padres baseball operations staff. It's weird, but this is the preferred outcome.
Yeah, isn't that strange? That after 2 seasons, and as Darren Smith, when I was driving in, he's mentioned before. This year, don't get it twisted, was a massive disappointment. But the 2 best seasons, if at least in full seasons, if you take out 2020, that the Padres have had under Preller have been with Bob Melvin as their manager. A trip to the NLCS and a disappointing season, but they played good ball in September to finish above 500, which his teams had not done in a full season prior to 2022. But they're, to use a word I believe used by Dennis Lin in one of his pieces, irreconcilable differences. And those, despite what AJ Preller wanted to tell us on the Zoom on October 4th, and how he and Bob Melvin have a friendship and they give no credibility to anonymous reports, those anonymous reports look pretty darn true right about now. And I think we all knew that on the outside. He tried to discount that reporting, but how else would you describe Bob Melvin leaving a place that is committed to winning, even if they have to slash payroll? You've got a star-studded roster. You, I think, learn some lessons on how to construct the roster this year. A fan base that Melvin just gushes over and seems to really enjoy managing in front of, and then of course, yeah, just the roster as a whole. And obviously there are some frustrations, there are some things that needed to be dealt with, and some issues in the clubhouse that kind of came to light. But there seems to be one obvious explanation for Melvin wanting to take this opportunity and the Padres saying, yeah, sure. Because, I mean, they could have said no. They said no when the Mets wanted to talk to Ryan Flaherty. But we knew that wasn't going to be the case. We knew that wasn't the direction that they were going to go. And so, Preller can say whatever he wants to say. And I think we all kind of saw through that. But the way things have played out over the last 48 hours, I think confirms that reporting that didn't need to be confirmed from Dennis Lin, from Kevin Acee, but to shoot that down and to see things play out the way that they have, I think that makes it pretty concrete that there were some issues that both sides just couldn't get past.
And those issues, Darnay, are so huge that it forced Bob Melvin to leave a roster that, compared to most major league teams, is stacked. Leave a fan base that sells out its home stadium, makes for an awesome home atmosphere, and to leave an ownership group that is committed to winning a World Series, and will spend money to make that happen. Managers don't just walk away from these games or from these teams and these franchises. Bob Melvin walked away from all that because his relationship with AJ Preller was so bad, and because he despised so much how this organization was being run. That kind of takes you inside the curtain, behind the curtain a little bit, to kind of just show what the heck was going on inside this franchise. And let me say, even though Melvin left and didn't like it, he is not to blame. He has a huge stake in this too. So it's not just AJ Preller's fault.
Yeah.
It's Melvin's fault, because he's got to make this work too. But this just paints how dysfunctional it was for Melvin to walk away from all that, because managers don't leave that. But
yeah. Backtrack a little bit. Not official yet. I mean, of course, the reporting from The Athletic, Andrew Baggarly, Kevin Acee of the Union Tribune, Tuesday morning. There is a Game 7 in the NLCS tonight, and as we know, and as others have mentioned, Major League Baseball would prefer that this news doesn't become concrete on a day where they want all eyes and all attention on Phillies D-backs. Wednesday and Thursday are wide open, and so I think the expectation is the Giants will make this official on Wednesday. And I would assume that we'll hear from Bob Melvin shortly thereafter. And I am under the understanding that we will have a chance to hear from AJ Preller at some point once that happens. So, look, no guarantees, but I do believe that we'll have a chance to get his take on the matter, his reaction, and an idea of what this means going forward for the Padres, who will have a fourth manager in a 6-season span. This will now be 4 full-time managers that have either been fired or have decided to move on under the guise of AJ Preller. And what is interesting about this is, going back to Bob Melvin, he now, as you mentioned, some of the blame, some of the ire, frustration, some of the bad press can now be pointed in his direction, because a lot of it had been on AJ Preller. And there's a segment of the fan base that is Team AJ and feels like Melvin held the club back. And, is that my opinion? Not necessarily. Am I going to argue with you on that right now? Probably not. But, now this looks poor for Melvin, who told, the AP told the UT that he will be back in 2024. And, a guy that is well respected, that we've said ad nauseum, as he is, a guy that is well thought of in the game, to now handle this situation this way, it does leave a lot to be desired. And I would understand they're the first on the home schedule next year, Todd.
That's wild. That's
A-
wild. Bring it on
And
them. It'll
and
be great.
so what the atmosphere will be like, I don't know. I guarantee it's going to be a crowded dugout with Bob Melvin pregame. Everybody wanting to hear what he's got to say about things. I guess post game, perhaps, if it's yeah, I don't know how they'll do that. There won't be an evening game the day before, so he'll have a chance to have his address one way or another.
Yeah.
So yeah, suddenly Bob Melvin doesn't look as good as he did, I think, in the eyes of many because of his reputation, because he had more just kind of positive stuff in the bank than AJ Preller had. And now when you look at the situation, there is more blame to go around. And, it's unfortunate that it goes this way. And this is not the part that matters. Nobody cares about this. But Bob Melvin's great to cover, at least from our standpoint. I can't speak for the beat writers, but he's awesome, from just like a local TV schmuck who is, looking for sound bites on different topics and all that. Super cordial, gives you what you want. He's awesome from that standpoint. So I've thoroughly enjoyed covering him for the last couple of years. Disappointed from that standpoint to see things go the way that it has. That's not the important part. The important part is getting the Padres sorted out, and you can talk amongst yourselves over whether or not the leadership team is in place to do that. I think there is, it's fair to be skeptical now at this point.
Hey, Darnay, you mentioned how much you like hearing from Melvin and how he gives you honest stuff.
I wish we would have done that at the end of the season.
And he'll answer your questions. Wednesday in San Francisco, he's going to face some questions. People are going to ask him. It's going to be very interesting because I don't think Melvin's going to shy away from those questions. I think he's going to give you some hard truths if you're a Padre fan and some real reasons for why he left. I don't think he's going to throw dirt on the organization or belittle AJ Preller, but I think he's going to give you some real insight into what happened and why he left as best he can. So I'm really looking forward to that press conference because I think he's going to say some things. He's not going to come out throwing haymakers at the Padres, but I think if you understand what goes on in baseball, you will enjoy that press conference. Or if you're a hardcore Padre fan, maybe looking for a little insight and some honesty through all this, because quite honestly, neither Melvin nor Preller have been honest throughout this whole process last year.
And that is an important point to be made. If you look back at just what's gone on again since October 4th and since the season ended, lies have been told. Lies were told by AJ Preller. Lies were told by Bob Melvin. And look, we know that people in these positions aren't the most forthcoming. I think everybody would love for there to be more transparency and more clarity within this organization, because it is so hard to get clear, straightforward answers from anybody. And I think that's certainly frustration for people in our position. I think from the fan base as well. And it just kind of adds to the mess. And what we'll get out of AJ Preller, I don't know. He has in the past. It's like when you have these press conferences and Zooms, like you said, you don't get as much as you would like. It's not just kind of gloves off and here are the hard truths, unfiltered. But if you listen close enough and read between the lines, you can kind of pick out little things here and there that shed some light. And I think we've gotten that from AJ Preller here and there with, when the Andy Green situation wrapped up, when the Jace Tingler situation wrapped up. I seem to recall AJ maybe a little more bluntly than I expected, kind of describing some of the frustration with the communication issues and all that. And so I think some of that will come out. Bob Melvin doesn't seem like the type of guy that's gonna, trash anybody, and but I think at some point, you'll hear something that maybe finally, gives some credence to what's been said, and finally somebody, forward facing, owning up to the situation and some of the dysfunctionality. It just might be, kind of picking it apart with a fine tooth comb. And I'm really curious, like, I would imagine are the beat writer types going to be at that presser, involved in that Zoom with Melvin, to ask some of the questions from the Padres standpoint, because I think those questions beg to be answered. at this point, given the way things have played out. And so, yeah, a lot that I'm curious to hear about over the next couple days as we get a chance to, because they're no longer living in the same house. They're no longer
No.
tethered to one another, and so they can say whatever they feel comfortable saying, and it's not going to affect them really at all. It's just a matter of how comfortable they are. Um, Airing each other out. I think from a content standpoint, that'd be fun for the rest of us. I just don't know if they want to, carry the situation in that manner.
Yeah, and a couple things pop out to me. It even though this has gone on, like it was terrible this year between Melvin and Preller in the front office, and it was not good last year. Last year the team won, and you didn't hear enough about this, and they were in position to make the World Series, maybe win the World Series. If the players play better this year, as we saw, there's a world in where this still doesn't come out. This dysfunction can exist. It can be a terrible working environment for both men, but it could be a winning organization still. So ultimately, no matter, even if you clean up the front office, that will help a little bit. But the players still have to play better. I mean, this isn't a magic elixir moving forward. And the other thing I keep coming back to is this is historically played out in San Diego before with the Padres, with Bruce Bochy and various managers and general managers, Jed Hoyer, et cetera. And with the Chargers, with AJ Smith and Marty Schottenheimer, and then going back to Bobby Ross and Bobby Beathard. Power struggles between managers and general managers seem to be the norm in San Diego. And if you go by the historical significance and how things have played out, usually revisionist history, it says the manager or the coach was in the right. So we'll see what happens here. It'll be interesting. That's for sure.
Isn't that funny? And how poetic is it that last night Bruce Bochy booked a spot in the World Series? It's just
painfully poetic, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. And the fact that it's not the Diamondbacks, it's not the Rockies, like it's the Giants again.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say we've lived through this because I wasn't around at the time, but the fan base and the city has lived through this, and here we are in this position again. And I trust Bob Melvin as a manager. I think he knows what he's doing. Way smarter baseball people than me trust and believe in him. And I don't know what the Giants are going to have on their roster next year. Maybe they go out and try and make a big splash, but I could see them having a functional baseball team. They surprised us in 2021. They could surprise us again. Or no, they surprised us in 2022. No, 2021. Sorry, man, these seasons are running together. They surprised us, and here we are again. That could certainly happen again. And yeah, what happens with the Padres? It's just it's funny that after all of this, AJ Preller is empowered. And all the reporting, all that was said, all the hand wringing, all that, and the belief that there were going to be some hard conversations. Just did anything really happen? Was there any uncomfortable discussions? Were there any uncomfortable discussions? Was there any thought to moving on or anything like that? It doesn't seem like it, and Peter Seidler's statement that they're going to make the necessary changes to yada yada, like is this what you view as the necessary changes, just figuring out a way to rid yourself of Bob Melvin? I just it's not working. It hasn't really worked. When it has worked, it's worked under Bob Melvin. And, to your point, the talent level is such that if guys play up to their capabilities, then they could be a playoff team, and anything happens once you get there. And look at the Dodgers, look at the Braves. They've lost early. Like, there's no guarantee. Look at the Diamondbacks. Like, look where they are. They're on the precipice, possibly, of making a World Series. And so you just want to get to that point. This team will be talented enough to do that, and maybe everything will be fine. But at a certain point, I would think, like, these underlying issues continue to pop up. Don't you want to get to the root of that? Because I just think you might have a season where everything's fine, but inevitably there's going to come to a point where things are fracturing, and if you don't have everybody pulling the rope in the same direction, if you don't have a clear vision, it can cause things to kind of snowball and get away from you like they did this year.
Well, that was kind of the message that we heard. What was it, 3 managers ago? Like I need my guy. So he got Jace Tingler,
Yeah.
and the organization was all rowing in the same direction. Well, it turned out in hindsight, hey, maybe Tingler didn't have enough cachet in that locker room. So let's go get Bob Melvin. We're all going to row in the same direction again. That didn't happen. So now we're circling back, and it looks like it's going to be Mike Shildt or Flaherty. And those are AJ's guys, and we're going to be rowing in the same direction again. So it's almost the runway has been cleared again to try this team. All organization is behind Preller, and we're rowing in the right direction. If you go with Shildt, I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of, but if you go with
no, it's good.
If you're getting with Shildt, you're going with a guy who's proven track record and has some cachet with the players. If you're going with Flaherty, then you're really embracing the Preller route.
Yeah. And Melvin did seem to be, because I think Jace Tingler, you heard the name Ron Washington a lot. And I would venture to guess somebody like Ron Fowler, who was around at the time, probably would have liked to seen a guy like Ron Washington. And Fowler left after 2020. And I will say in all this, the stuff he had to say about the team after they fired Andy Green and hired Jace Tingler, and heads will roll, and they know the stakes. They have to compete in 2020, 2021. There seemed to be a real good cop, bad cop dynamic between he and Peter Seidler. Peter Seidler, clearly the good cop. And we all like and respect Peter Seidler and hope he's doing great. And when Fowler was gone, one thing that we thought was cool is, hey, payroll's gone on. That's exciting. You know what I mean? And, whether that was because of Ron Fowler, maybe he was a little less risk averse. When Peter Seidler got in control, he was approving all these big time contracts, which is great, super exciting. But it feels like this franchise lacks and is missing and needs a bad cop right now, because there doesn't seem to be anybody that's willing to put their foot down, say what needs to be said, address things head on, ruffle some feathers. Ron Fowler was that guy. I've got a clip I could pull up to prove it to you. We've all heard the stories. They don't seem to have that guy right now, on top of just the uncertainty of how involved Peter Seidler is because of his health situation. And it'd be great to see him back to where he has been the last few years. And so that's part of the situation too. You feel like this organization could really use somebody that's going to be like, nope, we're not doing that. We need to figure this thing out. And if it means cutting ties with this person or this person, we're just going to do that. We're going to make that hard decision because what's going on right now isn't acceptable. That's an aside. Looking forward, Bob Melvin, my point was Bob Melvin seemed to be a response to Andy Green and Jace Tingler. Like Jace Tingler didn't work out, I don't know that Bob Melvin was AJ Preller's first choice. Because that hadn't been his MO in the past. And so now you had a guy, despite what they might have said in the introductory press conference, like they didn't see eye to eye. He wasn't a guy that was just going to come in and run the show how AJ wanted to run, because he'd done it before and he'd done it with a lot of success. And so now you're in this position where gave that a try. Now the overwhelming belief is Mike Shildt, Ryan Flaherty. I would think Mike Shildt would be a good in between for the reasons you just said. He's got some alignment with AJ Preller, but he's also got the experience piece and a guy that knows his voice, knows himself in that seat. It's not going to be completely new. And, you're kind of checking both boxes a little bit. To me, that would be the smart move. Where I've gotten myself in some trouble the last day or so is by saying just go all AJ Preller. And that's not necessarily because I think that's the right thing to do or the smart thing to do or would bring them most success. I say that because it's out of like resignation, because you've tried these other routes, they haven't worked. Some of these same issues have crept up, but AJ Preller is empowered on the other end of it. And so, and in this case, there's so much, well, is it Bob's fault? Is it AJ's fault? If you just go all in on AJ Preller, then there's no argument. There's no trying to figure out, is it because of this? Is it because of that? We have formed the franchise in his image. His thumbprint is everywhere. And then we just know. We just have complete certainty. There's none of this, no arguments on Twitter after every single game. Is it Preller? Is it Melvin? Blah, blah, blah. We just know it's AJ Preller. And if they flourish, then we'll know, well, okay, maybe we should have handed him the keys and given him complete, not that they had it. I mean, obviously he's made all these decisions. And so this isn't necessarily new, but you can just leave no doubt. If they flourish, good on him. Way to go, AJ Preller. If they fall apart, then it's like, well, finally, the blame, the accountability reaches AJ Preller because went 100% with his guy and his vision, and that would seem to point to Ryan Flaherty. And so there's two different sides of my brain. One, like, okay, in a perfect world, Bob Melvin's still around. This is not a perfect world. Mike Shildt seems to be the responsible decision. Ryan Flaherty seems to be the, well, just throw your hands up, go ahead, do it, see what happens decision. And at this point, I guess I'm just kind of tired of some of the conversations that we've had. Like, is it the manager? Is it the general manager? Let's just give the general manager everything he wants, and then we'll see what happens.
I agree with you 100%. If you hire Ryan Flaherty, you are essentially, AJ's pushing all his chips in the pot and saying, I'm all in. This is it. It will ride or die with this season and the results from here. If you go Mike Shildt, you're hedging your bets a little bit for all the reasons we touched on. I think it's going to be Mike Shildt. Everyone who's close to the team thinks it's going to be Mike Shildt, but you can convince me, as you just did, like the path to say, like, AJ Preller's best path to prove that his way works is to go with Ryan Flaherty, and either you're bringing home a World Series or you're going down in flames. But I think it's going to be Shildt.
And maybe it's unfair to Ryan Flaherty, but I think everybody just assumes, and our guy Lauren chimed in, can we stop pretending anyone but a ventriloquist dummy will be the new manager? It might be unfair to Ryan Flaherty, but I think the perception is, he would be a puppet, and he would be happy to carry on whatever is handed down to him, carry out whatever is handed down to him. Maybe that's not the case, and maybe Ryan Flaherty has more of a independent voice than we realize. But that seems to be the general outlook. What's interesting with Mike Shildt is based on the reporting of folks like Dennis Lin and Kevin Acey's got good alignment with AJ Preller. Have you seen that clip of Mike Shildt that's floated around the internet from the clubhouse with the Cardinals? I think it was after they beat the Braves in a playoff series. I haven't. Somebody on Instagram Live posted it, and it's one of those things that just ended up on the internet, and so it gets recycled. And it is expletive laden, saying, they start the fight, we finish the fight, we're gonna bleep everybody up. They don't do bleep to us. We bleep them. I mean, it is like, and if he's your head coach or manager, you're like, all right, I'm going to run through a wall for this guy. When I watch that video, I don't necessarily think that get the impression that he's somebody that if there's a disagreement, he's just going to roll over and take it. He's just going to roll over and be like, okay, whatever you want to do, that's fine. I don't see him in that light. And so I see that, I'm like, oh, this is a guy that he might push back a little bit. And then that leads me to think, okay, is this going to be another like Jace Tingler type situation where, yes, there is alignment, but, it could go south because inevitably there's going to be differences of opinion. There's going to be friction, things that pop up, disagreements, and you have to manage that. And to this point, that hasn't been navigated in a healthy, sustainable manner. And so,
Well, that's darn it. You just hit on the root of the Padre problems right there. I mean, structurally, this organization has had issues. It's had issues deciding which contracts they want to dole out to which players, which direction they want to go, who's the leading voice in making out the lineups, how much analytically should you listen to, things like that. Behind the scenes, that's been the problem, right? That's been the rub from once you started with this big league talent, once you went all in from Tingler to Melvin, the behind the scenes stuff of how the organization works, who has control, who has final say, that's been the issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and one other thing I don't think the players, like if you hire Mike Schilt or Ryan Flaherty, or if you go get someone else, I don't think it makes a difference to the players. I think they know their poor performance doomed Bob Melvin. I think they'll tell you that if they play up to their standards, as you referenced earlier, then the manager is kind of rendered obsolete. Of course, the manager can play some key roles in clubhouse culture and a few games here and there, but ultimately, it doesn't really matter who they hire. The players have to play better.
It might matter in one case, and another comment. Carnalis? Help me out, Todd.
Yeah, you got it. 619. Carnalis 619.
Carnalis 619. If we let Soto go, I really hope the fans push back and boycott. It's great having a star-studded team, win or lose. Kind of going in a different direction, but how much does the direction they go impact Juan Soto? Like, how does he feel about Ryan Flaherty? How does he feel about Mike Schilt? It doesn't matter so much for Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado. I think probably have a good idea of how Manny Machado feels about Ryan Flaherty, a guy he played together with in Baltimore, or Tatis or Musgrove or any of these guys. But for somebody like Soto, whose future is in question, he's been around these guys, now has a chance to be managed by one of these guys in 2024. So how does that impact his feelings towards the organization and desire to be here long term? That's kind of the one area where the direction you go could have some implications.
100%. And what's the best sales job you can do to convince Juan Soto to stay? I say is win. You make a deep run in the playoffs, you go to the World Series, you show Juan Soto that you're a stable organization that will support him on and off the field and support him with whatever he needs to achieve success for the remainder of his career. That's how you do it. And whether that's Flaherty or Schilt or someone else, I mean, as an organization, if I was in charge of the Padres, I would have confidence. If I had reached that level of my career, I would have confidence that my decision would give Soto the option to say, yes, that's the right way, and I want to move forward with these guys. I think you have to have belief in yourself that this is the right decision I'm going to make for the team, for our organization, and for Juan Soto moving forward. If you don't have confidence in yourself to make that decision, that may speak about what's going on big picture. But you're exactly right. I mean, Juan Soto is a huge part of this. If Juan Soto is a Padre for the next 10 years, that's a big difference than if Juan Soto's not a Padre, even if you trade for 3 or 4 complementary pieces or a prospect. Yeah, it's a big part of all this.
And John Schaefer had a good point. Like, how many managers is Fernando Tatis Jr. going to have in his career?
12, 20.
I mean, he's really on pace to double-digit managers in like a 12, 15-year career.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't, how much I would think these guys care a little bit. Like, I would think, you want to have like Manny enjoyed in Baltimore, a sustained long-term relationship with a Buck Showalter. Having a guy that can help you through your career, the various ups and downs, different situations, and having that consistency with, rather than like every other year, every year really between the roster construction, what big names are here and what big names are not, or who your manager is. Like, there's a massive change every single year.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem super healthy, and that doesn't seem super helpful and conducive to just kind of consistency and long-term sustained success. So, at some point, like, you just can't do. And for the benefit of, Fernando Tatis Jr. isn't like a young guy anymore. It seems like he's, fifth season despite missing 2022. But you got to have some consistency with these guys, and that's been unattainable so far, since, in Tatis and Machado's time within the organization. With Flaherty, what I would find, a couple thoughts from a coaching standpoint. You got to keep Ruben Niebla. Ruben Niebla is a revelation and should be and I don't know what his aspirations are as far as managing his own team. So maybe that'll factor into it at some point, but a local guy and, answered that question for the Padres, at that pitching coach position. Just phenomenal. And so one worry that I had is, if you overhaul the coaching staff, you better make sure Ruben Niebla is still around, because you might be fine losing Bob Melvin. I think a lot of Padres fans are, but I think a lot of Padres fans aren't fine with the idea of losing Ruben Niebla. And so, just like Ruben Niebla was hired before Bob Melvin, that news even dropped, like, I might try and lock in Ruben Niebla before we find out if it's Shildt, Flaherty, or door number 3. The other thing too is, how concerned are they with losing Ryan Flaherty? If they go with Shildt, I believe, is 55 years old. So I would think, guys are managing into their 70s, at least a decade, right? Like, if he can find a place where things are stable and it's working, like, why wouldn't Mike Shildt want to manage for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, which would not really have a pathway for Ryan Flaherty. Is he just the bench coach? Is he, I think let's get rid of the whole offense coordinator thing. Can we do away with that? Can we find a real hitting coach, and take less off Ryan Flaherty's plate from that standpoint? Just make him your bench coach. But they, as I said earlier, denied the Mets a request to talk with him. What does that do now for Ryan Flaherty? And is he going to start to look elsewhere for his opportunity, a place where the pathway is a little bit clear for him to become a big league manager, assuming that that's his kind of long-term aspiration?
If you hire Mike Shildt, you do risk losing Ryan Flaherty, but this team and this roster is built to win in the coming years. I don't think you can be beholden to what Flaherty's career is going to look like. We might not have him as manager in, 2030. Like, this team needs to win in the next few years. So you got to look at that first. And that's your utmost priority when you go manager. And 100% agree with you on Ruben Niebla. You can argue that is it's more important to retain him because of what he does with this pitching staff year after year than it is a manager. If you told me you had like Walter Alston as manager and you didn't have Ruben Niebla, like, I would rather have me as manager with Ruben Niebla and think your chances are better. Like, he gives this team more wins than the manager, I believe, at this point.
Yeah, if you had 2 buckets, one had 10 names of managerial candidates and one had 10 names of pitching coaches, and you could hand pick the name in one bucket, but then blindly draw the name in the other bucket.
Exactly.
I'm hand picking Ruben Niebla and saying, whatever the heck, manager, fine, whatever. But at least I know my staff is going to be on point and set up for success, rather than I hope one of these guys works, and then I hope we get a good pitching coach. You at least have half of that like locked in, because as we know, first-time managers don't work. Esteemed, most highly respected managers in the game don't work. Ruben Niebla seems to work, so let's ride with that guy.
Yeah, and he works so far in various situations, whether it's here in San Diego or in Cleveland. So you know what you're getting, and it is of the utmost importance to retain him. Hey, one more thing that popped into my head. It's just so weird that
you could just stop there.
It's just so weird.
Stop there. The San Diego Padres. It's just so weird. That's it.
They let their manager go, and I don't think they should have fought to retain him. But in division, nobody does that in any sport. You never let your guys stay in division. You don't even trade your players in division. It's just so bizarre. And it just shows you what a strange situation this is all around.
Yeah, and obviously there's a Bruce Bochy situation, and it doesn't help that Dave Roberts then went up the road, and
Yeah.
he was in house, and he wasn't given the opportunity, and Dave Roberts certainly has his critics, because of what's happened in October, and who knows, again with the way that Preller cycled through managers, there's a good chance that if they go with Dave Roberts instead of Andy Green in 2016, maybe that because that was or would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, whenever. Maybe it's 2 seasons and then he's done.
I think it was Bud Black, and then Dave Roberts was like interim manager for a game or two.
And
then
Pat Murphy, that's right. Yes.
And then Dave Roberts said, I'm going to the Dodgers.
Yes. And so, yeah, if instead of Pat Murphy, you go with Dave Roberts and he has a chance, I don't know what have we heard from Pat Murphy? I don't know what Pat Murphy.
Well, I haven't heard it from, I mean, I know is he back with the Brewers? I think he's back with the Brewers on their staff. He's on some staff. I think he's with the Brewers.
But we have heard of is an American. He is currently the bench coach for the Milwaukee Brewers. He previously served as interim manager for the San Diego Padres. Yes. So haven't heard much from him. Have heard much from Dave Roberts, and so let's count them down: Bud Black, Pat Murphy, Andy Green, Rod Barajas, Chase Tingler, Bob Melvin. To be determined.
Yeah, and interesting, as you talked about, like future Ryan Flaherty's future, he's important to the organization. At one point, Rod Barajas was that guy too, the young up-and-comer who had a great relationship with all these Padre prospects through their minor leagues. We want to keep him in the fold. He's potential managerial candidate one day. He came up, it didn't work so well. He was obviously kind of pushed into that earlier than they wanted to, but if you're thinking Flaherty down the road, maybe Barajas is another red flag to say like, doesn't always work out so well.
Where's Rod Barajas right now, Todd?
I don't know that one.
He is with Miami on Skip Schumacher's staff, a team that just made it to the postseason.
I got it. There you go. There you go. Very interesting.
So it's, it's funny how things, are working out for others that move on, and things haven't worked out swimmingly for the Padres. It's funny. One last thing, and I'm shouting out all the John and Jim guys, even though they gave me a hard time yesterday on Sports Wrap because I said just go all in on AJ Preller, and now they're giving me a hard time today because I said, wouldn't it be tremendous content if the Giants said, Bob, we're actually not crazy about you, and then I didn't think that was going to happen. I just thought, man, that would be fantastic content. Like that would be fun for us to talk about. What's going to happen now? This is great. This is fascinating. But knowing that was not going to happen. But Jim likes to go on his retweet storms and bringing back old stuff all the time. And the one that I do find interesting, and he posts this often, is, I'm looking for it now, the quote from Peter Seidler that I believe was to the Union Tribune from June or July, saying, I'm not afraid to make changes. I never have been, but I really value stability. And when I know the person as well and the skill set as well as I know AJ and Eric Grupner, they're not going anywhere, period. I believe in stability. That is something that is undervalued, generally speaking, in organizations and maybe particularly in sports franchises. That stability clearly applies to AJ Preller. That stability doesn't seem to apply to his manager. And you cannot look at the Padres right now and see them as a vision of stability. And I would think that's something that I'm sure Peter Seidler will be asked about at some point. But that's important here. That's kind of the headline here. Bob Melvin moving on is, again, like you said, probably the preferred option for both sides, but it underscores the lack of stability that this organization has had so far under AJ Preller.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about for months and pretty much years now, Peter Seidler likes AJ Preller. He trusts AJ Preller. He wants AJ Preller to run his baseball operations. That has not changed. No matter how much craziness is swirling around this team, or how much underachieving, or how many contracts have been missed on, or money ill spent, Seidler values AJ Preller, and he thinks AJ Preller can get him the World Series that the Padres have lacked. Now, something interesting you talked about is who's really making the decisions moving forward. Is it Seidler still? Is the equity group involved? That we don't know, but it's clear that AJ Preller has been empowered and will continue to be empowered in this organization.
So I would assume we will get, the official press release from the Giants Wednesday. Thursday at the very latest.
Yeah, I just saw the Giants are Wednesday morning expected to announce AJ. Sorry, that would be a shocker. Expected to announce.
They're both going to San Francisco.
Wednesday morning press conference is what it looks
like. And then my guess is we get a chance to hear from AJ either tomorrow or Thursday.
Yeah, and AJ can come out of this kind of, even though I don't know how many people will believe it, he can come out of this in his eyes looking clean. Like, hey, I wanted Bob Melvin back. We thought Bob Melvin was going to be back. Bob Melvin left us high and dry.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what we're going to hear. I don't foresee him saying anything different.
I think a narrative will be spun. Narrative is always spun. These guys in these positions, they're good at that.
Yep.
All right, Todd. Thanks for doing this, and appreciate everybody watching and listening. TBD on when our next pod is. Maybe it's Wednesday. Maybe there's some bombshell or we hear something incredible Wednesday, and we feel the need to hop back on.
Manny Machado, player manager, announced Wednesday.
Do it at this point. Fernando Tatis Sr. as your hitting coach. So at the very latest, we'll be with you on Thursday to make sense of whatever is going on at that point, and hopefully a chance to react to what we've heard from Bob Melvin and or AJ Preller. But we will soon find out. Thanks as always for being with us.